Okay, so we're going to do the work together 8-1 on page 205.
205?
My bad? Am I wrong? 8-1 on 205, yes. Okay. So, what we see here is the worksheet for Darlene's delivery service. And in particular, the areas of the worksheet that we're going to be focusing on are right here. So when you're doing your adjusting and closing entries, you're focusing on these columns here for your closing entries and these columns here for your adjusting entries. So your adjustments column for your adjusting entries, and then your income statement and your drawing account for your closing entries. So we're going to start with doing our adjusting entries first. Why do we want to make sure we do our adjusting entries first?
So that all our accounts are adjusted.
Correct. So all of our accounts are up to date before we close them. Listen to this. This guy might have read something someplace. No, he's just naturally smart. Okay. So we're going to start out, when we get to our journal page, in the problem it says, you've got the worksheet for Darlene's delivery service for the month ended July 31st. And you're going to do the adjusting and closing entries to close out the balances for the fiscal period. You're going to use page 4 of your general journal. And you're going to journalize and post to close out and finish your worksheet. Okay, so we're using page 4. And then we're going to use the information from our worksheet, the adjustments column, to do our adjusting entries. So we're going to start with putting our title in for adjusting entries. And we center our title for the adjusting entries. And then we said the end of the fiscal period was July 31st. So we'll put July here and 31st. Okay, and our first adjusting entry is going to be for supplies. And we're going to debit our supplies expense. And we're going to credit our supplies for $713. So we're going to debit our supplies expense. And we're going to credit our supplies for $713. And the doc source here, you can, just to help you remember it, put the worksheet. 713 and supplies 713. Okay. Then our next adjusting entry is going to be for our prepaid insurance for $300. And our insurance expense for $300. Okay. And again, our date is going to be the 31st. Insurance expense $300. You can put worksheet again if that helps you. $300. And prepaid insurance $300. Do we have any other adjustments on this worksheet to make? No. So we're done with our adjusting entries. If we had more adjustments, we would make them, but we don't, so we're good to go. Okay? So then the next piece is going to be to do our closing entries. So again, we're going to put a little heading here that says closing entries. And what did I say the order of our closing entries was? What do we close first? Revenues. So we're going to start with our revenues. So over here, we had sales in our worksheet, we're getting all of this information for adjusting and closing entries from the worksheet. So our first one is our sales. Our sales are $5,511. So to close out our sales, what do we have to do? Debit them. Okay, so we're going to go over here on the journal and the 31st. So we're going to debit our sales for $5,511. And again, if it helps you, put worksheet. Then you can leave it blank. Okay? And then to close out our sales, what are we closing it to? What's that income summary? We're closing it to that temporary account called income summary. And God bless you, $5,511. Okay, so sales are done. Then what? We have to close out all of these expenses. Do you guys know what the dollar amount is that you're going to close it to? Good. $2,181. So these should all total up to $2,181, okay? And what are we closing our expenses to? Income summary. And are we debiting or crediting our expenses? Crediting them. Good. So we're going to debit the income summary for that $2,111. Again, we could say worksheet. $2,181. And then we're going to go through and do each expense in one compound entry. Advertising expense was $821. Insurance expense was $300.
What was the advertising expense?
$821. And miscellaneous expense is $347. And supplies expense is $713. Do we have any more expenses? No, so then we're done with that closing entry. So what's the next closing entry that we're going to do?
Drawing.
Before the drawing. Right, we're going to close out the net income, right? In this case, we know it's a net income because here on our worksheet, our revenues exceeded our expenses. So it's the revenues are higher than your expenses by $3,330. So we're going to debit our so if you think about it right now, let's look at this. Our income is $5,511. Our expenses are $2,181. So therefore, we have a positive $3,000, positive in the sense that we have a credit balance of $3,330. So if we have a credit balance now, to close out that credit balance, what do we have to do? We have to debit. So that's why we have to debit the income summary. So we're going to debit the income summary for $3,330, and we're going to credit that to the owner's drawing account. Who's the owner in this case? It's Darlene Wong Capital. That's her name. I didn't make it up. Darlene Wong Capital. $3,330. Okay, if this was a loss, we would debit Darlene Wong Capital and credit the income summary. Because if this was a loss, so let's just say we had sales of $5,000 and we had expenses of $7,000. That means, technically speaking, we have a negative of $2,000, right? That's a loss when our expenses exceed our revenues. So that means we would have, technically speaking, a debit balance So in order to close that out, we would have to credit the income summary and debit Darlene Wong capital, which makes sense because if we have a loss, isn't that a negative to the owner's capital account? Right. So in order, if you had a negative to the owner's capital account, you're debiting the owner's capital account. Okay. So last thing is going to be to close out the drawing. So the drawing was $2,100. Oh my God, we got to hurry. We're going to do Darlene Wong capital. And we're going to do Darlene Wong drawing. For $2,100. And that's the closing and whatever adjusting process. You guys, Applia 8-1 for homework, okay? Applia 8-1 for homework.
We have to give you our
Yeah, drop your accounting log notebooks back on my desk so I can get them.